There's a really problematic and disturbing phenomena whereby all sex workers must fall under the same category in movies and television, or their characters get automatically classed as villains or morally bankrupt. Be sure to look for this tired and problematic formula in a television show or film near you, because it's just so prevalent, and it goes like this. To be a sex worker, or to be allowed to do sex work in a way that is not morally reprehensible according to, the moral standards of these films, you have to be supporting kids in a time that is economically difficult, and your husband left you, and you've done everything to keep up your virtue and find a job, but you just can't find anything, and there's this opportunity where you can make the ultimate sacrifice to sacrifice your body even though you really don't want to, so that you can do it for your kids. And it's like basically the gun to your head scenario. Another such character who's really morally upright and really smart and doesn't want anything to do with the world of sex work, but they're putting themselves through college with some kind of sex work, usually stripping. I've never personally known a stripper who was paying their way through college by stripping, but I definitely know plenty of people who completed post-secondary education and ultimately turned to sex work for a more lucrative and fun career. So let's get into the discussion. If a classic mainstream film from back in my childhood was going to deal with sex work in any type of way, even in the trailer, they had to let you know that the person was being pushed into sex work despite their moral obligations. They were trying to help out a family member who was sick, or in most cases they have kids and the partner or the husband is totally out of the picture. So one such movie that comes to mind right away is Striptease, and just like right in the trailer they have to knock you over the head with the moral virtue of the character and the fact that they're being forced into sex work.
My ex-husband is a thief. That hardly qualifies him to raise a 7-year-old child.
Neither does being a mother without a job.
Of course, Striptease is formulaic, problematic, 90s gobbledygook. Having said that, of all the films I'm talking about in this discussion video, I think I would recommend it the most. It's fun, it's entertaining, it's pretty sexy, and above all, it's the one film that actually has a sex work positive message. The film shows that sex work is good, honest work. And the rich and powerful people who take advantage of that by means of trying to cast sex work as some kind of a morally bankrupt institution are they themselves the seedy and morally bankrupt individuals.
Hey, this is honest work. You have nothing to be ashamed of.
I know that, and you know that, but the judge won't.
And I recommend it for that reason alone. I'm not saying that there aren't scenarios where people are forced into sex work by all kinds of means. There absolutely are, and that's a very serious thing. I don't honestly think that these movies take that seriously or talk about a realistic representation of that in a serious light. These are annoying fantasy films conjured up by annoying Hollywood writers. Another film in that vein is The Players Club, where the main character is working really hard to pay for her education, and she's kind of, irritated by anybody at the club who seems to indulge in sex work anyway, and anyone at the club who indulges in sex work anyway is a morally bankrupt character who ultimately comes out to be a villain. And I don't think that's representative of the truth. I don't think that everybody is forced into stripping and sex work, and I don't think that all people who are morally upright are just in it to, support their kids or their sick relatives or put themselves through college. I think some people do sex work just to solely support themselves, and they want to be proud of their work and see it as something that they are proud of. So I don't think that is ever portrayed in film. There's no portrayal of sex workers who are healthy and well-adjusted, or even portrayals of sex workers who want to be doing their work and just want to be doing it safely but can't, sadly, for whatever reason. One of the few films that doesn't fall into this formula is the film Showgirls. The character is a runaway. There is some very small, not really helpful discussion of STIs in the world of sex work. There actually are queer characters, and her fremesis or stage enemy or whatever actually has a really fun lesbian tension with the main protagonist, and they actually do share a kiss and some romantic energy at the end of the film, which surprised me. Having said that, Showgirls is an awful train wreck of a film, and even if you just want to tune out and watch a film as a piece of erotica, I do not recommend this film. It's upsetting, it's boring, it's plotting. There is not one likable character in the whole film. The main character is a total jerk, and the only person in the film who is a sweetheart, who is a nice likable character, takes the protagonist in the beginning of the film and is a real sweetheart through the whole film. Of course, that character is horribly sexually assaulted in a violent scene, which is really upsetting to watch. Not just, if you were triggered by assault scenes, but also because the film has spent so much time developing this one character as the one nice, morally upright character in the film. I felt duped as a viewer, and I felt like this was a cheap literary device that I saw coming. There's no discussion of the character's trauma or, how horrible the assault was for them or how we could make sex work safer in our society. Instead, the main character exacts a violent revenge on the attacker, and we're supposed to feel vindicated about that, and like the girl who was assaulted is going to be like so happy that her attacker was assaulted, but there's no real deep discussion about this event, and to me, I found it a pretty upsetting part about the movie, which I thought they did not deal with well. I think that's sadly really typical of 90s films, but this film has no pleasant characters in it whatsoever. Everybody's a horrible monster to each other. The main theme of the film seems to be that to get ahead in the world of sex work and show business, you have to be the biggest jerk possible, totally morally reprehensible, and cutthroat and claw your way to the top of the industry at the expense of others. Which I think is an awful message. Even if the writers think that that's the true world and a true expression of being a showgirl in Vegas, I think there should be some commentary as to what we should aspire to as a society or in that culture. There is no character in the film designed to show what good, morally upright behavior looks like or to suggest that we should aspire to that. And there's definitely no message to say that we should make the culture of showgirls in Vegas or sex work in Vegas better and more safe and more respectful. Rather, the message seems to be that it's a seedy and criminal world, and the way to rise to the top of it is to be the biggest criminal and the most cutthroat jerk you can, and to take advantage of other people and cut people down at their expense, and that world is there for you and you can take advantage of that. And I think that's a really sleazy message, and ultimately the film itself is really sleazy. Anyway, this could be a full-on video discussion about all the diet culture nonsense, kink phobia, and horrible problematic messages in the film Showgirls, but let's move on. While these problematic literary formulas were really cemented in the 90s in films like Striptease and The Players Club, I just want to say that there are definitely a few films from that era that don't fall into those same formulas. It's not that there is zero positive representation for sex worker characters in the media. In fact, Jessica Rabbit, the Dabo Girls in Deep Space Nine, and a few other lovable characters really do fill that need. But the sad reality is that there is an abysmal lack of positive representation for sex worker characters in the media. Ultimately, the stories are not about wanting a better environment or safety for sex workers or a better standard of behavior for Johns, but they usually concern themselves with creating a seedy environment that is fetishized, that you as a real world person feel you could take advantage of if you were seedy enough or criminal enough or had enough money. I'm tired of that literary message, and I feel like it creates negative stigma, and I don't think these stories have brought light to any real important issues in sex work, like how John should behave, the reality of STIs, or safety and respect for the sex workers themselves. And in fact, there's lots of minor sex work characters in films from the 90s and the 2000s and the 80s, but of course, they're usually morally bankrupt characters in what is thought to be a morally bankrupt backdrop, and usually they're seen as faceless, expendable people who often die a violent death in the film. I'm not criticizing the nature of the story that, someone is forced into sex work and does want to just support their family, or they do just want to pay for their sick grandmother's surgery, but the reality is that once you get hit over the head with this story so many times, it becomes questionable and unrealistic. Just like there's no such thing as an unrealistic body type. Yet people say unrealistic body type. Oh, they have an unrealistic body type, which I think is a weird phrase, but I absolutely know what they mean. What they mean is they're sick of seeing the same exact body type on magazine cover after magazine cover, and superheroes, and casts of horror movies where everyone, including the janitor, is like a thin, hot model type person. It sets an unrealistic standard of beauty in culture when there's so many media sources venerating one body type. And that's exactly what is toxic about this narrative about sex workers in our media. It's become toxic because we're hit over the head with the same narrative again and again. And you know what? These stories don't ring true. They really don't ring true. They don't feel like good quality stories about sex workers. Flash forward to today, 2021, and there have been some definitely really good expressions in film about sex work and stuff, but they're largely just like art house films. Tangerine is one such example, which is filmed by trans people on their cell phones. And of course, trans people every day are filming stuff better than major Hollywood movies like Avengers on their phone just for the purposes of like their TikTok and their OnlyFans. It's really cool that a group of artists was able to pull together something using their cell phone, which is equivalent to a major motion picture with riveting characters, and it portrays sex workers in a not stereotypical way for motion picture cinema. Having said that, who's heard of Tangerine? Like when I was a kid, I heard of Striptease, I heard of the Players Club, I heard of Showgirls, and I didn't see them till later on in my life, but absolutely I could have. They were available to me as a kid, and I was just aware of that story and that narrative to the point where you just get sick of it. It's really annoying. Thanks for watching part 1 of my video discussion on how sex workers are represented in popular film and video. Please leave me a comment or let me know if you know of a movie or television show that has positive representation for sex worker characters. And come back for part 2, where I'll discuss representation in television from SVU to Game of Thrones, and some more modern films like Hustlers and Soccer Mom Madam. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check out my other videos.